For 3 decades, Johnny Carson ruled late-night television like no one else. He was smooth, unshakable, and always in control. Night after night, millions tuned in expecting the perfect balance of charm and professionalism. But what kept audiences hooked weren't just the polished monologues or celebrity interviews. It was the rare unscripted moments when Carson's mask slipped, when chaos crept in, and the king of late night suddenly became just as human as the rest of us. Sometimes it was laughter so uncontrollable he could barely breathe. Other times it was raw emotion that caught him completely off guard. And then there were those controversial moments that sparked outrage, headlines, and piles of viewer mail. From flying tomahawks to comments that would never make it to air today. These were the 8 unforgettable moments when Johnny Carson lost control and made television history in the process. Number 1. Ed Ames' A Tomahawk Chaos. In 1965, actor Ed Ames appeared on The Tonight Show to demonstrate the frontier skill that made his character on Daniel Boone so memorable: tomahawk throwing. The setup seemed simple enough. A wooden silhouette of a cowboy was brought on stage. Ames explained the basics, and Johnny, always the curious host, leaned in with his usual polite interest. The audience expected a quick, entertaining demonstration. What they got was one of the most replayed moments in late-night history. Ames wound up and let the tomahawk fly. The throw was clean, the aim precise, but instead of landing squarely in the chest or shoulder of the target, the blade struck directly between the figure's legs. The studio froze for half a beat before erupting into absolute chaos. The laughter was instant, uncontrollable, and deafening. But what elevated the mishap from a funny mistake to an immortal piece of television was Johnny's reaction. He tried to keep his composure, but within seconds, he was doubled over. Tears streamed down his face as he gasped for air, clutching the desk for support. For nearly 3 minutes, an eternity on live television, he could not regain control. The king of cool, the man who always had a witty comeback ready, was gone. What remained was just Johnny, the regular guy who couldn't stop laughing. And when he finally managed to choke out a line, it was pure perfection. "I didn't even know you were Jewish." The audience roared all over again, sensing that they had witnessed lightning in a bottle. That unscripted accident revealed why Johnny was beloved. He didn't need a polished joke or clever setup to connect with people. In that moment, the professional mask slipped, and viewers saw a man who couldn't help but surrender to the absurdity of life. It was raw, real, and unforgettable. Everything that made late-night television magic. Number 2. Robin Williams Goes Rogue. When Robin Williams walked onto The Tonight Show, the atmosphere in the studio always shifted. Most guests followed Johnny Carson's lead, sticking to polite conversation and light promotion. But Robin was different. He wasn't there to play by the rules. The moment he sat down, he unleashed a storm of improvisation that no host, not even Carson, could possibly control. One of his most unforgettable appearances came in the early 1980s. Williams was supposed to promote a film, but within seconds the interview dissolved into pure chaos. He jumped from the guest chair, bounded across the stage, turned Carson's desk into a prop, and fired off rapid-fire impressions faster than the camera could keep up. One moment he was an alien, the next a Shakespearean actor, then a street hustler, all without pausing for breath. In the control room, producers panicked. This wasn't how the show was supposed to run. But Carson, watching the whirlwind in front of him, knew better. Instead of trying to wrestle control back, he leaned back in his chair, smiling through tears of laughter. At times, he looked more like a member of the audience than the host of the show. Johnny once said that having Robin on was like trying to catch lightning in a bottle while it's already running away. He never knew where the next line, jump, or character would come from, and that unpredictability was exactly what made it brilliant. While most guests relied on rehearsed stories, Robin lived entirely in the moment, dragging everyone, including Carson, along for the ride. What made these appearances legendary was the rare role reversal. Carson, usually the master of control, surrendered completely. He let Robin steer the night, and in doing so, showed his own gift as a host, knowing when to step back and let genius take over. For viewers, it was chaos, comedy, and brilliance all rolled into one, proof that sometimes the best television happens when nothing goes according to plan. Number 3. Dolly Parton's infamous comment. By the late 1970s, Dolly Parton was already a star, not just for her music, but for her larger-than-life personality and unmistakable sense of humor. When she appeared on The Tonight Show in 1977, the audience knew they were in for playful banter. What no one expected was a remark from Johnny Carson that would go down as one of the most controversial moments in the show's history. The interview began lightheartedly, with Dolly flashing her trademark wit and warmth. She was as quick to laugh at herself as she was to share stories from her career. Carson, always known for his gentlemanly on-air persona, seemed to enjoy her company as much as the audience did. Then, in the middle of their exchange, he made a quip that stunned the room. Looking at her low-cut outfit, Carson remarked, "I'd give a year of my life to peek under that blouse." For a brief moment, there was silence. Then the audience reacted with a mix of gasps and laughter. Dolly, ever the consummate professional, laughed it off gracefully. She had always been open about joking regarding her appearance, and she handled the moment with her signature charm. But the remark had already been broadcast live to millions of homes. The response was immediate. NBC received more viewer mail about that moment than almost any other in Carson's career. Some defended the comment as harmless and refreshingly candid, while others criticized it as inappropriate and disrespectful. Even Carson, who rarely addressed such matters publicly, privately admitted that he had crossed a line. What made the incident so unforgettable wasn't just the shock value, but what it revealed about a changing era in television. Humor and standards that had once been considered acceptable were beginning to be questioned more openly. Carson, usually so precise in knowing where the boundaries lay, misjudged them that night. And yet, for all the controversy, Dolly herself never expressed offense. She later said she took it as a compliment, brushing it off with her characteristic good humor. Still, the moment remains one of the most talked about episodes in Tonight Show history. A reminder that even Carson could occasionally let his wit take him a step too far. Number 4. Snake escapes during animal segment. Throughout Johnny Carson's 30-year run on The Tonight Show, some of the most unpredictable moments came from his recurring animal segments. Exotic creatures brought in by handlers from zoos or wildlife centers often stole the spotlight, and Johnny usually played the reluctant participant, curious but cautious. Yet one night in the late 1970s, a guest appearance by Joan Embery of the San Diego Zoo produced a moment that still stands as one of Carson's funniest unscripted reactions. Embery arrived with a variety of animals, including a massive Burmese python. At first, everything seemed under control as she explained the snake's size, weight, and habits. But midway through the segment, the python began to move more actively than expected. Within seconds, the enormous reptile slithered off the desk and in Johnny's direction. What happened next wasn't planned. Carson, usually calm and composed, leapt from his chair with surprising speed, backing away as the snake advanced. His wide-eyed expression said it all. This was no staged reaction. The studio audience erupted in laughter, sensing that they were watching Johnny at his most genuine. When handlers finally secured the python, Johnny returned to his chair, straightened his suit, and delivered the kind of perfectly timed punchline that made him legendary. "Somebody better check my pants." The crowd roared again, this time even louder, because the line matched the very real panic they had just witnessed. What made this moment so memorable was how it stripped away Carson's usual polish. Viewers weren't seeing the poised late-night host, but a regular man who didn't want a 60-pound snake crawling into his lap. That relatability, the sense that Johnny could be caught off guard just like anyone else, was a huge part of his appeal. The snake incident became one of the most requested Tonight Show clips, replayed for years as a perfect example of how live television could deliver unforgettable comedy when nobody, not even the host, knew what would happen next. Number 5. Bette Midler makes Carson cry. By 1992, Johnny Carson's time as host of The Tonight Show was drawing to a close. After 30 years of shaping late-night television, the final weeks of his run were filled with nostalgia, surprise appearances, and emotional goodbyes. But of all the farewells, none resonated more deeply than the night Bette Midler took the stage. Midler had been a frequent guest, known for her humor, wit, and powerhouse voice. On May 21, 1992, Carson's second-to-last broadcast, she joined Robin Williams in what was already expected to be an unforgettable evening. But as her segment wound down, she surprised Johnny, and everyone watching, by announcing she wanted to sing something special just for him. The studio grew quiet as she began One for My Baby and One More for the Road, the melancholy Harold Arlen and Johnny Mercer standard about late-night goodbyes. She sang directly to Johnny, her voice carrying both tenderness and finality. For once, Carson, usually the picture of composure, could not hide his emotions. The camera caught him blinking back tears, his expression softening as he realized he was not only saying goodbye to a guest, but to a lifetime of work. "You could have heard a pin drop," one crew member later recalled. Even the studio audience, used to laughter and applause, sat still, knowing they were witnessing something rare. When the song ended, Johnny leaned forward, kissed Midler's hand, and softly said, "I can't top that." It was an unusually raw admission from a man who had built his career on always having the last word. The moment quickly became one of the most replayed clips from Carson's farewell shows. Fans and critics alike hailed it as one of the most authentic displays of emotion ever seen on late-night TV. For a host who had always kept a certain distance, this was the night Johnny let the walls down. It was vulnerable, heartfelt, and utterly human, the perfect goodbye to a 3-decade reign. Number 6. Don Rickles breaks Carson's cigarette box. Johnny Carson was famously meticulous about his set. Every prop, from his pencils to his desk accessories, had its place, and none was more personal to him than his wooden cigarette box. So when comedian Don Rickles accidentally broke it while guest hosting The Tonight Show in 1973, he knew he was in trouble. What no one realized at the time was that this little accident would lead to one of the most spontaneous and hilarious moments in Carson's 30-year run. When Johnny returned the following night, he didn't let it slide. On air, he mentioned the broken box and promised to get even with Rickles. Audiences laughed, expecting the matter to fade away as just another running joke. But months later, Carson spotted his chance for revenge. Rickles was filming his sitcom CPO Sharky on a nearby NBC soundstage. During a commercial break of The Tonight Show, Johnny suddenly turned to his crew and asked, "Isn't Rickles taping today?" Without hesitation, he grabbed a camera crew and stormed across the lot, barging straight onto Rickles' set in the middle of a live taping. The CPO Sharky audience was baffled as Carson marched on stage, cigarette box in hand, and confronted Rickles. The comedian, still in his Navy uniform costume, looked genuinely shocked. Flustered, he stammered apologies, while Carson, mock stern but clearly enjoying himself, grilled him in front of everyone. "You broke my box," Carson declared, while Rickles pleaded, "Please don't humble yourself, Johnny. I'll make it right." The impromptu ambush left both audiences in stitches and instantly became a Tonight Show classic. More than just a funny bit, it revealed something deeper: Carson's affection for Rickles. Few people could have pulled off that kind of stunt without crossing a line, but their friendship allowed the exchange to sparkle with warmth beneath the humor. For a host known for control, this was one of the rare times Johnny threw the script out the window, and it worked perfectly, showing that sometimes the best comedy comes from letting spontaneity take center stage. Number 7. Jimmy Stewart's poem about his dog. Johnny Carson was known for keeping his emotions in check. Even when the show turned personal, he usually found a way to slip in a joke or keep the moment light. But in 1981, an unexpected guest performance broke through that carefully polished exterior, leaving both Johnny and his audience visibly moved. The source was none other than Hollywood legend Jimmy Stewart. Stewart had always been a warm and beloved guest. His halting voice and gentle manner made him a natural contrast to Carson's sharp wit. On this particular night, Stewart mentioned he had written a poem about his dog, a golden retriever named Bo, who had recently passed away. Carson, likely expecting a lighthearted tribute, encouraged him to read it. What followed was anything but lighthearted. Stewart began softly, describing Bo's habits with simple affection. But as the poem unfolded, it became clear this wasn't just a playful ode. It was a heartfelt expression of grief, loyalty, and love. Lines like, "And there are nights when I think I feel that stare, and I reach out my hand to stroke his hair but he's not there," carried a weight that left the studio in silence. As Stewart finished, the camera turned to Johnny. For once, the king of late night had no quip, no clever line. His eyes glistened, his face softened, and he seemed momentarily at a loss for words. It was a side of Carson the public rarely saw, vulnerable, deeply human, and touched in a way that no script could capture. Crew members later said that even behind the cameras, the atmosphere was heavy with emotion. No one expected to cry during The Tonight Show, but Stewart's words cut through the usual late-night humor and reminded everyone of something universal: the love we have for those we lose. The segment has since been replayed countless times, remembered not for its comedy but for its honesty. In that moment, Johnny Carson wasn't the witty host or the master of timing. He was just a man, quietly moved by another's grief. Number 8. Arnold Schwarzenegger speaks only in German. By the mid-1980s, Arnold Schwarzenegger was no longer just a bodybuilding champion. He was becoming one of Hollywood's biggest stars. With films like Conan the Barbarian and The Terminator, he was a household name, and appearances on The Tonight Show were part of his promotional routine. But one visit in particular took an unexpected turn that left Johnny Carson and the audience in stitches. The interview began as usual, with Carson welcoming Arnold to the stage. But when Johnny asked his very first question, instead of responding in English, Schwarzenegger launched into a long, serious answer entirely in German. For a moment, the studio didn't know how to react. Johnny leaned forward, puzzled, then looked toward the audience as if to ask, "Did anyone catch that?" Rather than breaking the bit, Carson decided to play along. He nodded thoughtfully, responding with nonsensical German-sounding words of his own, pretending to understand every detail. The audience quickly caught on to the gag, laughing louder with each exchange. What began as confusion turned into a hilarious mock conversation between the two men, one speaking fluent German, the other speaking gibberish. After a few minutes, Schwarzenegger broke character, laughing as he finally switched back to English. He admitted he had always wondered how Johnny would handle such a curveball, and the answer was clear. Carson didn't just handle it, he turned it into comedy gold. What made the moment so memorable wasn't just the joke itself, but Johnny's reaction. Many hosts might have been annoyed at being thrown off or embarrassed at not knowing what was happening. Carson, however, embraced the absurdity, turning what could have been awkward into one of the most charming moments of the night. The bit highlighted two things at once: Arnold's underrated comedic instincts and Carson's gift for rolling with the unexpected. It was yet another reminder that on The Tonight Show, the best moments were the ones no one could script. Moments born from surprise, quick wit, and the willingness to laugh at yourself. What made Johnny Carson unforgettable wasn't the polished routine, but the moments no one could predict. A sudden burst of laughter, an unscripted shock, or a quiet flash of emotion, those were the times that revealed the real Johnny. And that's the reason his legacy still defines late-night television today.